In February of 2025, Vince Gilligan, the acclaimed writer of The X-Files, Breaking Bad, and Better Call Saul, was presented an award by the Writers Guild of America. In his acceptance speech, Vince Gilligan made some remarks about writing that really got me thinking. I will link the full speech if you would like the full context, but long story short, Vince encouraged writers to write more about heroic characters and lamented the fact that writers have made villains so appealing to audiences.
In our profoundly divided country, everybody seems to agree on one thing. There are too many real-life bad guys. As a writer, speaking to a room full of writers, I have a proposal. It certainly won't fix everything, but maybe it's a start. I say we write more good guys. For decades, we've made the villains too sexy. When we create characters as indelible as Michael Corleone, or Hannibal Lecter, or Darth Vader, or Tony Soprano, viewers everywhere, all around the world, they pay attention. They say, man, those dudes are badass. I want to be that cool. When that happens, fictional bad guys stop being the cautionary tales that they were intended to be. God help us, they become aspirational.
These remarks really got me thinking about the nature of writing villainous characters, because the sentiment that Vince expressed in his speech is nothing new. The fear that evil fictional characters will inspire real-world atrocities is something that continues to pop up in our cultural discourse time and time again. I remember in the lead up to the release of the first Joker movie that there was so much fear and anxiety expressed in the media that this movie and this character would inspire disaffected men to commit real-world acts of violence.
Heavy security at a special New York screening last night of the controversial movie Joker. Counter-terrorism cops with automatic weapons flanked the entrance to the theater at glitzy Lincoln Center. The warning specifically mentions incels, involuntarily celibate young men whose frustrations could boil over.
But then the movie came out and nothing happened. And to be clear, I do agree with Vince Gilligan that all forms of media should have characters who are meant to be aspirational, characters who inspire positive and uplifting qualities in all people. There is a reason that we continue to tell stories about Superman, Spider-Man, and Captain America. We gravitate towards characters who are moral paragons that can set positive, heroic examples for us to follow. But why do we as audience members also gravitate towards villainous characters? And does our attraction to them truly create real-world issues? Well, here are my thoughts.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
In unpacking why audiences love villains so much, I've boiled it down to 3 primary reasons. The first is charisma. Villains are often some of the most popular characters in fiction because they are charismatic and, as a result, entertaining to watch. This is especially evident in cinema, in which actors are able to give captivating performances that help us to get engrossed in a character. The second reason is drive. In almost every story that has a true antagonist, the villain is often the most driven character in that story. In the classic hero's journey, the hero has to come out of a place of passivity in order to fulfill their destiny. But the villain often begins the story in a place of incredible drive towards whatever goal they may have. We as human beings are naturally attracted to those who have incredible drive and ambition, and it's no different in fiction. The third reason is what I can best describe as cool factor. And this cool factor can come in a variety of forms. Villains can be crafty, intimidating, sophisticated. We naturally gravitate towards them because there is some part of us that wants to be them. Perhaps you desire to be respected, to be powerful, to be loved. And it is those desires that make villains so compelling and relatable to us as an audience. So what is the point of this in storytelling?
What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss?
Sir?
The most you ever lost on a coin toss.
In the same way that the most compelling of heroes desire something that is relatable to us, the best villains often desire something that we relate to as well. And this is often what makes the conflict between the hero and the villain so compelling. Either they desire things that are inherently opposed to one another, or they desire the same thing but have radically different means of fulfilling that desire. So what is the point in making the villain cool? The first reason is simple. Because we as audience members like cool things. If we want the conflict between the hero and the villain to be compelling, then it stands to reason that both characters should be cool in either their aesthetic or personality. But the second and more important reason is that we as audience members should be able to see the humanity in the villain. This doesn't necessarily mean that we sympathize with them or their goals, but rather we are able to understand why someone would choose to go down their path. Seeing how much Michael Corleone is respected and loved by his family helps us to understand why someone might choose to become a mob boss. Seeing Darth Vader command fear and loyalty from his troops helps us to understand why someone might choose to become a tyrant. And seeing Walter White get to revel in the wealth and success of his criminal enterprise helps us to understand why someone might choose to become a drug dealer. It's easy to write off a villain who does evil for its own sake.
I never, ever do anything for goodness sake. Everything I do is for the sake of evil.
But someone who commits evil acts for the sake of something that we also desire makes them far more compelling and interesting to engage with. And this inevitably brings us to the big question.
But there's some good in everybody.
Not in this body.
Time and time again, when tragedy strikes in the real world, we as people are looking for someone or something to blame. And time again, the public ire is often turned towards entertainment. Two of the most infamous examples of this being Mark David Chapman's admiration of The Catcher in the Rye and John Hinckley Jr.'s obsession with Taxi Driver. I bring up these examples to say that it is entirely possible for deranged individuals to latch onto the wrong messages in a story, but these are the exception and not the rule. And I do not believe that the assassination of John Lennon or the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan would have been prevented if these pieces of media did not exist. Do we as creators really want to go down the rabbit hole of dictating what kind of characters we can and can't write? Should we really not have a Macbeth, a Holden Caufield, a Travis Bickle, or a Walter White simply because there are some individuals who take away the wrong message? I think there is a world of difference between relating to the desires and goals of a character and actually aspiring to become that character. In all of the examples of aspirational villains that Vince gave in his speech, all of these stories make it clear that these characters are not meant to be aspirational. The story of Michael Corleone is about a good man corrupted by an evil enterprise. A once renowned war hero who becomes a violent gangster who will stoop to any level to get what he wants. Godfather 1, 2, and yes, even 3 all make it clear that Michael's story is one of tragedy, not triumph. The story of Hannibal Lecter is one of a man gifted with incredible intelligence who chooses to use that intelligence to indulge in the most inhumane of desires. The story of Darth Vader is a classic tale of the fallen hero, the slave boy who grows up to be the one that enslaves an entire galaxy to tyranny. Behind the mask and intimidating persona is a fundamentally broken man who regrets the monster he has become. A man who has to be redeemed from his evil actions by the love of his son. The story of Walter White, Vince's own creation, is of a man who hides his evil actions behind a mask of good intentions. In spite of all of his claims that he is doing what he is doing for the sake of his family, Walter's actions ultimately end up destroying his family. He is forced to come to grips with the fact that he did what he did not out of altruism, but out of a selfish desire to feel fulfilled in life. And while I haven't seen The Sopranos, the clips that I have seen make it clear that Tony Soprano is not a heroic or aspirational character. Ultimately, a writer cannot control what a person takes away from a story. However, all of these stories are written in such a way that I believe the vast majority of people will take away the intended message. And I firmly believe that we shouldn't put limitations on storytelling because of the actions of a few deranged individuals. The human condition is one of complexity that contains both that which we adore and that which we loathe. And I'm firmly convinced that we as writers should never shy away from stories that speak to every aspect of that condition. In the same way that stories of triumph and heroism can help us aspire to great deeds, stories of tragedy and villainy, if told well, can act as powerful cautionary tales. In the same way that we need stories of Superman, Spider-Man, and Captain America, we also need stories of Michael Corleone, Darth Vader, and yes, even Walter White. Stories have the power to inspire and the power to warn. The only question is, how well do you write it? I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content, and let me know down below your own thoughts on this topic, as well as any other topics you would like me to cover in this format. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.